Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville, and today I want to talk about something that was in the news a couple of days ago, which was LVMH announcing that they were going to be coming back to Baselworld 2020 and maybe beyond, depending on how things play out. Now, in a previous video where I spoke about Breitling pulling out, I referred to the fact that I wouldn't be at all surprised to see LVMH leave. And so when they announced that they were staying, particularly in the wake of Breitling leaving, I went back and had a think about what would separate LVMH from Breitling and why would they come to such different positions. In doing so, I thought it might be useful to look at how is Baselworld proposing to change, because everyone keeps talking about the fact that this year was good but there's more change coming, and how might that have affected their different decisions. So I went to the source of all things great and wonderful in watch collecting. I went to the Hodinkee site, and I'll put a link up to where I drew this article from, and they had a nice neat little article, the 10 things which are changing in Baselworld 2020. Now, I'm not going to run through all 10, but there's 3 in particular I want to quickly touch on. The first is that Baselworld 2020 is intending to have new audiences. It's moving from a business-to-business model, and whilst keeping that business-to-business function, they plan on pushing the business-to-consumer end a lot. And there's a lot of talk in this section in new audiences in the Hodinkee article about bringing in lots of new audiences from the media, from fashion, from bringing in influencers and bloggers and all this new thing. And that's really important. The second thing is they spoke about some new events that they wanted to. And again, one of these was trialled this year in the jewelry hall, where they started bringing in stage shows and catwalk shows to better show off the jewelry. Because we always talk about Baselworld as a watch show, but it's actually the watch and jewelry show. So don't forget, there's a lot of jewelry stuff going on as well, which is probably also worth remembering. And then the third thing that I'm going to mention is that they're talking about the MCH, I think it is, the company that runs Baselworld, trying to introduce some new revenue streams for them to make more money, but also to make things a little bit cheaper for the presenters. Okay, and one of the key things that they're talking about introducing, which they have never done before, is allowing sponsorships other than just the watch brands. So we'll quickly run through those 3 again. New audiences, focusing on consumers, focusing on the media part of the consumption, in particular looking at social media and influencers. Talking about new events, emphasizing a lot of stage and catwalk style events, and then finally looking at new revenue streams and increasing the level of sponsorship. So with those things in mind, now let's remember that we're not talking about a watch brand or a couple of watch brands when we say LVMH is coming back to Baselworld. We're saying the whole group is coming back to Baselworld. Watches, Bulgari, Hublot, Tag Heuer and Zenith are only a relatively small component of LVMH. Maybe those brands are simply the door that opens to allow the rest of LVMH through the new fashion bloggers, through the new catwalk events, through the new sponsorships, to allow Dior, Moët & Chandon, Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, Marc Jacobs, Thomas Pink, the hundreds of other brands, or the dozens of other brands, I'm getting excited, the dozens of other brands within the LVMH group now suddenly see Baselworld as an option for them as well. So if we talk about Movado, pulled out of Baselworld a couple of years ago, they're now arguing something like they do this thing of their own in Davos, which they in a throwaway comment in another article he talks about, this costs us $2 million. If we'd have been doing this at Baselworld, it would have cost us $20 million. So okay, let's keep that number. Movado, 10 companies, about 20 million bucks. They're smaller companies than the than the LVMH watches. Let's say they were a bit more. They're $30 million for those 4 brands to turn up and do this show. That's a lot of money for those watch brands to find. Now, across the board, Baselworld's saying they're going to make going cheaper. Let's say they find a way to make going there across the board 20% cheaper. Through a combination of rents, new stage designs, and a whole bunch of other things. So now those 4 brands don't have to find $7.5 million bucks each. They've now got to find around about $5 to $6 million bucks each. But then let's just say Moe throws in $500,000 bucks. Fendi throws in $500,000 bucks. Dior throws in $500,000 bucks. Because for them, this is actually now, that's not a particularly big layout for a show. And then before you know it, the 4 watch brands are actually spending very little of their own marketing money. LVMH is spending a truckload, but they're getting all this other marketing that they've never got before. So maybe that's why suddenly this begins to look really good for LVMH. And they're saying, yeah, we'll commit to this. We'll also look forward to, if this works out well, if we're able to move on. For example, if they're allowed to then retail those products in some of this stuff they're talking about, what we're going to do next year and where we're going to go next year, if they're able to go even further and start retailing those products, for God's sake, they could turn Baselworld into a profit centre in the same way as Ferrari actually makes money from competing in Formula One races. A fashion brand like LVMH, if it leverages a collection of media and high rollers at a place like Baselworld, could easily generate $30, $40, $50 million worth of marketing and sales. So maybe that's the direction that Baselworld's going to go. Maybe a brand like, maybe that's where a brand like or a group like LVMH sees itself going. Interestingly, Chanel had a bigger push than usual at this show. And the Chanel tie-up to FB Journe might go some interesting places if Baselworld continues to go down this way. Now, I'm not predicting that that's what's going to happen, but what I am saying is that is an avenue that is clearly open now, and it's an avenue I suspect LVMH is going to explore in 2020 to determine, do we want to commit to this long term or not. So that's, what I would also quickly say is everything I just said does not apply to Breitling. Breitling don't care if fashion bloggers start turning up. Breitling don't care if you're going to start having catwalk models. Breitling don't care about bringing in other sponsorships because they've got nothing else to sell. So if you look at it from this point of view, looking at what are the changes and what are the changes that the Baselworld's talking about making, what do those changes mean for a company like LVMH versus what do those changes mean for a company like Breitling? Well, then it actually just reinforces. There's no reason for a watch company like Breitling to necessarily attach itself to Baselworld. But there's potentially every reason for a fashion house, this broad luxury house like LVMH to really want to commit. Quickly before I go, shout out, I've had a couple of pushes recently from the boys on Scottish Watches. Thank you so much. I have doubled my subscriber base since you first mentioned me. I'm closing in on 100. We'll see how we go. I noticed you also mentioned Clockbait in the same one, and I think I'm pipping them. So we'll make it a race between myself and Clockbait, see who can get to 100 first on the back of a push from Scottish Watches. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone else who's subscribed. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe and you'll see more content like this. Thanks very much. Bye.